Imagine a world where the lights flicker out, not all at once, but gradually, so slowly that the people living through it barely notice. The grand cities, once bustling with life, begin to empty. Streets that echoed with the footsteps of traders, scholars, and artists now lay silent, cracked and overgrown with weeds. The structures that once stood proudly as symbols of human achievement start to crumble, but not because of some sudden catastrophe. No, this decline is quieter, more insidious. It's as though the very fabric of society starts to fray at the edges, one thread pulled loose at a time, until only a tangle of what once was remains. The Western world, at its height, was a beacon of progress and innovation. It was where ideas flourished, where new ways of thinking were celebrated, where the boundaries of human potential seemed limitless. From the Renaissance to the Enlightenment, from the Industrial Revolution to the digital age, the West seemed unstoppable. But beneath the surface of this success, cracks were forming, subtle at first, then widening as time passed. These weren't the kind of cracks that could be repaired with quick fixes. They were fundamental, deep-rooted issues that went to the very core of Western civilization. For centuries, the West had built its dominance on a foundation of economic prosperity, political stability, and cultural cohesion. But nothing lasts forever. What happens when that prosperity begins to wane? When political systems no longer serve the people but the interests of a powerful few? When the cultural fabric that once united people starts to unravel? These are the questions that have haunted historians, sociologists, and philosophers for decades. And as we look around today, it's hard not to wonder if we're living through the answers. In the past, the fall of great civilizations often came from external pressures. Empires rose and fell in the face of invasions, natural disasters, or the ambitions of rival powers. But the decline of the West seems different. It's not an outside force that is bringing it to its knees. Rather, it's the slow erosion from within. Like a grand oak tree, towering and majestic, but rotting at its core, Western civilization is showing signs of decay that cannot be ignored. Take, for example, the economy. For much of the 20th century, the Western world enjoyed unprecedented levels of economic growth. The post-World War II era was one of prosperity and expansion, with the middle class thriving and the promise of a better future driving innovation and progress. But today, that promise seems more like a fading dream. Inequality is rising at an alarming rate. The gap between the rich and the poor has never been wider, and for many, the idea of upward mobility has become a cruel illusion. The once robust middle class is shrinking, and entire communities are being left behind. Corporations have become more powerful than ever before, often dictating policies that serve their interests rather than the needs of the people. Governments, once seen as the protectors of their citizens, now often seem beholden to these corporate interests, creating a sense of disillusionment and distrust among the populace. The economic engines that once powered the West are sputtering, and the repercussions are being felt across every level of society. But the economy is just one piece of the puzzle. The political landscape of the West has also undergone a profound transformation. Democracy, long heralded as the crowning achievement of Western civilization, is in crisis. Trust in institutions has eroded, with many people feeling that their voices no longer matter. Populism has surged as people search for someone to blame, while political polarization has reached dangerous levels. Instead of finding common ground, societies are splintering into factions, each more entrenched in their own worldview, unwilling or unable to engage in meaningful dialogue. The rise of misinformation and the breakdown of traditional media have only exacerbated these divisions. In an age where information is more accessible than ever, it's becoming harder and harder to separate fact from fiction. The digital age, which promised to bring people together, has in many ways driven them further apart, creating echo chambers where only certain voices are heard and dissenting opinions are drowned out. As a result, the political discourse has become toxic, with compromise and collaboration seen as weaknesses rather than strengths. Culturally, the West is also at a crossroads. For centuries, Western civilization was defined by its art, philosophy, and intellectual achievements. It was a culture that prized individualism, freedom of thought, and the pursuit of knowledge. But today, many of those values seem to be under siege. The rise of consumerism has turned art into a commodity, with creativity often taking a back seat to profitability. The once vibrant cultural landscape of the West has become homogenized, with the same ideas, products, and values being mass-produced and sold to the highest bidder. At the same time, there's a growing sense of cultural fragmentation. The shared narratives that once united people, whether they were national identities, religious beliefs, or philosophical ideals, are dissolving. In their place, new subcultures and identities are emerging, each with their own unique values and perspectives. While diversity can be a source of strength, it can also be a source of tension, especially when there is no longer a unifying vision of what the society stands for. The West, once so sure of its place in the world, is now struggling to define itself in an increasingly complex and interconnected global landscape. And then there's the issue of technology. The technological advancements of the last few decades have been nothing short of revolutionary. The digital age has transformed every aspect of life, from how we communicate to how we work, to how we understand the world around us. But with these advancements have come new challenges. The rise of automation and artificial intelligence is reshaping the job market, threatening to displace millions of workers and upend entire industries. Social media, once seen as a tool for connection, has become a breeding ground for division and hostility. Moreover, the sheer speed of technological change has left many people feeling disoriented and disconnected. There's a growing sense that the world is moving too fast, that the values and institutions that once provided stability and meaning are no longer equipped to deal with the challenges of the 21st century. People are struggling to find their place in a world that is increasingly defined by algorithms, data, and machines. The promises of technology, efficiency, convenience, and connection have, in many cases, come at the cost of human connection, empathy, and community. The environment, too, cannot be ignored in this discussion of decline. The West, with its industrial and technological prowess, has left an indelible mark on the planet. For centuries, natural resources were exploited to fuel growth and expansion, with little regard for the long-term consequences. Now the bill is coming due. Climate change, resource depletion, and environmental degradation are not just abstract concepts. They are realities that are already affecting millions of people around the world. The very systems that were built to sustain life, water, food, energy, are under strain, and the West, once at the forefront of scientific innovation, is now grappling with the consequences of its own actions. At the heart of all these issues is a deeper existential question. What is the purpose of Western civilization? For centuries, the West has been driven by a sense of destiny, a belief that it was leading the world toward a brighter future. But today, that sense of purpose seems to have eroded. In its place, there is a growing sense of disillusionment and uncertainty. The grand narratives that once inspired generations, progress, enlightenment, freedom, are being questioned and, in some cases, rejected altogether. Many people feel that the systems in place no longer serve their needs, that the promises of modernity have been hollow, and that the future looks increasingly bleak. There is a growing sense that something fundamental has been lost, that the West is adrift, no longer guided by the ideals that once made it great. Of course, not everyone sees the decline in the same way. There are those who believe that Western civilization is simply going through a rough patch, that the challenges it faces are surmountable, and that a new era of progress and innovation is just around the corner. Others argue that the West is undergoing a necessary transformation, one that will lead to a more inclusive, equitable, and sustainable future. But regardless of where one stands, it's hard to deny that the West is at a turning point. The forces that once propelled it to greatness are no longer as strong as they once were, and the challenges it faces are more complex and daunting than ever before. Whether Western civilization can adapt to these new realities, or whether it will continue to decline, is a question that remains unanswered. As we look to the future, it's important to remember that the decline of civilizations is not inevitable. History is full of examples of societies that faced seemingly insurmountable challenges, and yet found ways to renew themselves. The Western world has shown remarkable resilience in the past, and there is no reason to believe that it cannot do so again. But to do so will require a fundamental rethinking of what it means to be a part of Western civilization. It will require a willingness to confront the uncomfortable truths about where the West has gone wrong and to embrace new ways of thinking and living.